Attack on Titan is a story full of characters with lofty goals and ambitions. From Eren's desire for freedom from the terrible curse placed on the Eldian race by the prejudiced majority of humanity's population, to Erwin's selfish desire to see the truth that his father had figured out, only to be silenced by the corrupt higher-ups of Paradis's mysterious shadowy government. Due to this fact, these characters have little time to contemplate the costs and prices of their missions in life. They pour their souls into these goals, just for the slim chance of achieving them and finding meaning in this cruel world. For it is the only thing that brings them comfort and peace. The idea of relentlessly pursuing something gives them peace. It is the only thing that keeps them from breaking under the pressure this world places on their shoulders. They push their loved ones away, for they know that said loved ones will try to stop them. These people care about them and therefore are distracting them from the goal they have dedicated their lives to. So, in response, they run away from the harsh reality of their circumstances. They make rash decisions and overall lack the mental maturity to truly find happiness or peace in their lives. They are endlessly consumed by a sense of duty that, frankly, is only there because they think it will make them more satisfied. This is how dreams can blind and distract people from what is right in front of them. Believe it or not, a lot of characters in Attack on Titan love other characters, whether that be romantically or otherwise. But the cruel world of the story doesn't allow for such development to take place or arise. There are so many big things going on that love is not a priority to most people. The world is so cruel and hostile that the only way people can see hope is in the false horizon, the vision of a better world only they can create for humanity, that they gaze upon in their dreams. And that is why so many people end up unsatisfied that they couldn't just accept the love that they feel deep down in their hearts. The concept of love in Attack on Titan is one of controversy. Many people don't understand why such a grim, dark and overall mature series would choose to focus on this concept that is mostly perceived as something overly idealistic and hopeful, especially in the final chapters, which got tons of hate for turning Attack on Titan into a story about love and connection, and all of that perceived mushy stuff that disgusts many people. However, I truly believe that Attack on Titan is a story that is defined by the connections between its characters, whether those connections be romantic or otherwise. The events of the story are defined by the feeling of love, and I think that makes the story extremely beautiful, as love is a fundamental feeling in the human psyche. In this video, I am going to go through various examples of love being a driving force behind the story of Attack on Titan. It is a genuinely important idea fundamental to the story's concepts and themes that should not go overlooked due to its subtle yet ever-present nature in the narrative. The first and probably most important demonstration of the power of love in Attack on Titan is the story of GrishaYeager, someone who most would call a heartless, cold and calculating man laser focused on his mission to restore Eldia's glory days. However, this is only a surface level understanding of Grisha, for his character is built upon the foundation of a loving heart, something unexpected given his commonly abrasive and aggressive behaviors in the story, especially in the flashbacks we get of him in his younger days. You see, Grisha, in his youth, was very optimistic and hopeful. He wanted freedom and therefore loved to explore the tiny world he grew up in. He also took care of his sister, which of course led to what happened when that free spirit of his dragged her along with him into the depths of humanity's depravity. This event changed Grisha. It turned his heart of hope and optimism into a heart of steel and determination to turn the status quo of the world on its head. Grisha was motivated by one thing and one thing only: love. He loved his sister, and when he lost her, he knew that he had to act. He was hesitant to do so early on in his adult years, and for a time he resigned himself to the fate that awaited every Eldian living on the mainland. But in the end, When confronted with the truth of his sister's murder, he didn't hesitate to take back the freedom that he and his people were robbed of. Grisha was motivated by the generations of Eldians who had been oppressed by the people of the mainland, including his beloved sister, and therefore, the foundation of his restorationist cause was a genuine love for his sister and his people, and a desire to prevent cases like hers from ever becoming reality again. Unfortunately, this trauma and drive destroyed any semblance of a relationship he could have had with his son Zeke. While Grisha did give Zeke affection at some brief points in his formative years, their relationship was mostly built on the potential Zeke had to be a weapon strong enough to bring Mali to its knees. Grisha loved Zeke, but not as himself. He loved Zeke as the vision of what he could become for his cause. He ignored the wishes of the boy himself, and made him feel like there was no meaning in his life other than the empty purpose that was already decided for him before he was even born. In this case, Grisha's ability to love was restricted by his sense of duty. He probably loved Zeke deep down, but that mission, to restore Eldia, avenge his sister, and generations of past Eldians, is what led to the punishment Zeke gave him for his lack of true love for his son. Grisha refused to see Zeke for what he was, denied his wishes, and in the end, only loved Zeke for what he could be in service of his grander ambitions. However, Grisha's story doesn't end with the poor treatment of his son coming back to bite him. This betrayal, in the end, is a reality check for Grisha. When faced with the enigmatic Eren Kruger and his request to Grisha to love someone within the walls, for it is the only way to stop this cycle of violence, Grisha finally comes to understand the meaning of life. Grisha is a doctor, and therefore, his role in this world is to protect. His hands aren't meant to kill, they are meant to give life. And so, Grisha embraces the role in his second chance, his second life. Grisha finally lives his life to the fullest, finding someone to love in Kala, raising his second son Eren, and genuinely loving him, not seeing him as a tool for his goals, but as a genuine person who Grisha wants the best for. Grisha's love for his family, for Kala, for Eren, even Mikasa, is proven in his hesitation to carry out his goals. He had so long to pull it off and finally succeed in his ambitions, but he couldn't, because love got in the way. Even when he finally grew the balls to pull it off, something stopped him, and that thing was love. He is a doctor, he is meant to save lives. He values every life he comes across, and therefore, this love for all and lack of hatred for anyone is what leads to the tragedy of his character. He is forced to kill people he has no hatred in his heart for, by his own beloved son no less. Grisha doesn't know why things had to be this way. He doesn't know why he couldn't just live and love Zeke earlier. But of course, in his final moments, Grisha finally has his chance to make amends with his beloved son. This moment gets me every time. It sums up what makes humanity beautiful. There are so many things, so many goals that we wish to accomplish, and we may forget about them, but in the end, when we lose the things we value most deep down in our hearts, we finally understand what we should have been doing all along, loving the people special to us. What is freedom? To some, it is the ability to do anything and go anywhere. To others, it is the ability to express oneself to the world and force your will onto it. And of course, to a lucky few, freedom means life itself, enjoying the little things, enjoying the simple pleasures and joys of existing, even in this cruel, cruel world that may restrict the ability for one to be fulfilled. The Survey Corps are an extremely pivotal part of the Attack on Titan story. While they are mainly just there to be our main group of characters, they also act as a symbol, an ideal that personifies the beauty of humanity and the beauty of being free in this cruel world. Various characters throughout the story strive towards freedom, and in this section I will explore how each of the major players tie into this overarching theme of the narrative. The three most crucial characters that tie into the theme of love and freedom in the Survey Corps, other than Eren himself, are Erwin, Shardis, and Marlowe. Let's start with Erwin. For most of his screen time, Erwin is portrayed as a heroic, brave, and inspiring leader, but in his final few appearances, the mask is lifted and we see the humanity within. Erwin's previously untouchable and unquestionable bravery and love for his soldiers is revealed to merely be secondary to a far greater goal than just liberating humanity. Erwin seeks freedom in the form of truth. To Erwin, freedom is understanding and truth, and he moves forward for the sake of this ultimate goal, even leaving behind the woman he loves, Marie, to marry his friend Niall instead, all because he is caught up in his own desire for freedom. This denial of happiness, love, and peace is prevalent in Shardis and Marlowe as well. Shardis seeks freedom in that he wishes to be the hero that will liberate humanity, but in the end, all of his efforts amount to nothing and he becomes a miserable, jaded man who pushes away the woman he loves to be charmed by the more charismatic and enthusiastic GrishaYeager, who found success in life unlike himself. Marlowe seeks freedom in improvement and cleansing of corruption in humanity, to make a difference in this world, even going as far as to put his own life on the line. But in the end, his efforts lead to nothing but his untimely death, and in those final moments, Marlowe realizes something. So do Erwin and Shardis in their final moments. Love is freedom. Erwin could have been happy and instead he is charging to his death. And yet he is still happy with his life because his loved one, his brother in arms, Levi, is alive to live peacefully and like himself. Shardis connects with another so-called failure of a commander, and finally acknowledges that his role in life is not to be the hero of humanity, but the ones who molds and shapes the true heroes. He is Keith Shardis, not a hero, but he is Keith Shardis, a mentor and a commander, who helped to liberate humanity even in a small way. He affirms that identity, that role he has in the lives of his students in his final moments, and finds peace in that. And of course, Marlowe realizes how much, deep down, he loves Hitch, and finds comfort in that image, the idea of a happy life with her, before being hit by a speeding rock. Not only is romantic love freedom, but so is any other form of love. Be that loving nature, loving animals, loving religion, loving anything at all is true freedom. And of all those forms of love, the truest one of all is loving life itself, and the things that bring you joy. And that form of love is personified by two different characters who are very controversial in the greater fanbase.
ArminArlert, 君を15代調査兵団団長に任命する。調査兵団団長に求められる資質は理解することを諦めない姿勢にある。君以上の敵にはいない。
Hanji and Armin are the most free characters in all of Attack on Titan. That is an undeniable fact, and anyone who hates on them for being cowardly or whatever simply don't understand their character arcs. Both were given a role, the same role in fact, the role of the commander, the role of Erwin, and the role of being humanity's saviors. However, these two people aren't so shallow as to care about the same things as most of the other scouts. Their goals run much deeper. Hanji puts it best in her introduction scene with Eren, where she states that for the longest time she hated the Titans just like everyone else, until she saw something as small as a Titan's severed head not being as heavy as it should be, that made her reconsider her perspective on them, and what the mission of the scouts truly is. Hanji is a curious mind, an innocent soul that simply wants to explore everything this world has to offer. So is Armin. Both of these people go against the norms of their society, where revenge and hatred are what motivate people, and in the end, both of them embrace what they believe in. Hanji was never fit for the role of commander. She was always meant to be that curious, eccentric, and somewhat crazy scientist with a heart of gold. That's the true Hanji. The Hanji that faded away once she was given the responsibility of being commander. So in the end, her dying having let go of that burden, surrounded by the things that fascinate her, truly free for the first time in forever with her flaming wings leading her down to heaven, is such a fitting ending. Armin too, someone who is also forced to be the commander, embraces what he believes in and rejects the cycle of hatred in favor of his own beliefs. The true beliefs of the Scout Regiment that were long forgotten. No matter what anyone says, he is ArminArlert, the true hero of humanity. He isn't Erwin, he is Armin. And Armin has his own beliefs. The beliefs that despite every hardship life throws at you, moving forward will eventually lead you to true peace. That is just life. It isn't an easy road, but it's a road all must go down and accept, while at the same time believe in and hope for a better tomorrow. What it means to be a scout is to just live. Live for yourself and your family, friends, and forget about all the hatred and vitriol in the world just for one simple moment. The moments of pleasure we find on this earth, no matter how small, are what give life meaning. Hanji understood that and spent her final moments surrounded by the things she loves. Armin understands that. He helps Zeke understand that. And in the end, even Eren finally understands what life is truly about. What it truly means to be a scout. Now it's time for the main event. Mikasa and Ymir are two of the most controversial characters in Attack on Titan, and in this final section of this video, I will be defending them and their roles in the story, for they complete and personify the final type of love in the story of Attack on Titan, romantic love, and how it makes life worth living. Many people claim that Mikasa is a stereotypical female anime character, or, to be more accurate, a stereotypical yandere type character, whose entire purpose revolves around the main character. On the surface, this does seem to be true. Mikasa is mostly a very stoic and calm character, but when Eren is in danger, you know that iconic sound will escape her lips. All jokes aside, Mikasa does indeed care about Eren a lot, and it is painfully obvious that her main goal is to protect him at all costs. However, her reasoning for this is not as stereotypical or surface level as it seems. There is a much deeper layer to why Mikasa loves Eren so much, and it goes all the way back to the beginning, even before the events of the current story. The reason Mikasa loves Eren so much can be found all the way back in the 6th episode of the anime and one of the earliest chapters of the manga. Mikasa's entire character throughout the story is built upon this one moment in her life. This moment that taught her that the world is cruel, but also very beautiful. One of the central themes in Attack on Titan is that we must keep the children out of the forest. But Mikasa's story shows us that despite the forest being cruel and turning innocent kids into killers and monsters, there is still beauty to be found in the world. Eren isn't just someone Mikasa loves, he is someone who saved her life, and who protected her with no regard for his own. While to us, Eren's behavior at this moment seems somewhat psychotic and uncomfortable to watch, to Mikasa, Eren represents hope and beauty in this moment. Even after having lost her family, her home, everything that she knew and loved, this boy cared for her, gave her this scarf, and gave her comfort and hope in this cruel world. And that touched her heart on a much deeper level than just her developing a crush on him. Mikasa's love for Eren is pure and untainted at first. Even after having experienced so much depravity and cruelty, everything comes back to that scarf, the symbol of the happiest and most emotionally powerful moment in Mikasa's life. She doesn't just have a crush on him, she has a serious devotion to him. And who could blame her? He saved her life and gave her comfort even when all hope was lost. He saved her from the pit of despair. Mikasa's love for Eren is a perfectly natural response to trauma, but throughout the story it becomes an unhealthy burden upon her shoulders. While at first Mikasa's love for Eren is pure and beautiful when they are both young, by the time season 4 rolls around, Mikasa's previously stagnant and passive character becomes much more interesting through the introspection and recontextualization of how Eren is portrayed through Mikasa's eyes. During the final act of the story, Mikasa begins to think about Eren's past actions. Him killing the kidnappers in such an aggressive, abnormal and psychotic way. Him leading the Yeagerists, and of course, what he said to her in the table scene. All of these factors make Mikasa realize that perhaps her love for Eren was a negative burden on her shoulders, that she never truly understood him, and that she needs to let go in order to truly be at peace. Mikasa's arc is about moving on and living life without such a burden, because death is the natural order of the universe, and running away and refusing to acknowledge the death of someone, like she does in Season 1, is unhealthy, obsessive, and self-destructive. That is what Mikasa stands don't get about her character. Her love for Eren may have been pure at first, but by the end of the story it is a perverted and twisted love that is actively ruining Mikasa's mental health, and overcoming that problem is her arc. I'll talk more about this later. Now, onto Ymir. The reveal that Ymir was in love with King Fritz is one of the most controversial in Attack on Titan, and there's a clear reason why. It simply wasn't worded well enough. One of the main reasons people hate this reveal is that it seems to be romanticizing and actively not saying that this relationship is disgusting, which gives people the wrong idea. What Ymir went through led to a complex psychological response to trauma and loneliness, which developed into a twisted love for her master. If this was worded better, I'm sure it would be fine. Now, when it comes to Ymir's characterization, there isn't really much to say. For most of the story, she's more so just a plot device rather than an actual character. This more passive role in the story is only emphasized by the fact that she literally has 0 lines of dialogue in the entire 139 chapter story of Attack on Titan. So yeah, overall she really isn't that complex. Isayama just didn't portray how her mind works in a satisfying way. You see, Ymir is obviously a slave to King Fritz. Even long after he's dead, she follows his commands, since that's the only life she knows. She's been a slave for most of her life, and this type of situation can lead to victims growing too comfortable with such a lifestyle. This is what happened to Ymir, and even though she knew deep down that Fritz never loved her back, after he couldn't care less at her death, she still obeyed him out of a fundamental desire to have a purpose or meaning in her empty world. To summarize that, Ymir knows deep down that Fritz never loved her. She realizes this in her final moments, with Fritz not caring for her life but instead her power. But due to being a slave for so long, she couldn't find a way to exist without some kind of purpose in life. And that purpose was serving Fritz even in death. But of course, a part of her still craved freedom from her own hellscape of an existence, and so waited to see what love truly means through viewing the journey of Mikasa. I personally think Mikasa being key to understanding the character who started this cycle of violence in the first place is quite an undercooked reveal, but if you examine how Ymir views the world, it makes sense how she relates to the struggles of Mikasa and relates to the struggles of letting go despite your mind telling you not to. Mikasa lets go of her obsession and her burden. She decides to love Eren properly by putting him out of his misery and living her life to the fullest like he wants her to, instead of worshipping him as if he wasn't a mass murderer. The hardest sacrifices require the strongest wills, and Mikasa, in the end, develops the will and the ability to go through with what would have been impossible for her to do at the beginning. This plot point isn't really explored as much as it should have been in my opinion, and I think it's one of the most disappointing parts about the ending. But in theory, and in concept, I think it's a beautiful way to portray what love is. Love isn't blind devotion. Love isn't obsession. Love is a pure desire for belonging. Eren gave Mikasa a home, a sense of belonging. But in order to truly feel free in this world, sometimes you must grow up and move on, yet still carry that special someone with you. I think Mikasa moving on but still carrying the memory of Eren with her is very realistic and heartwarming, and it's a great ending for her character. Was Eren a bad person? Yeah, obviously. Was Mikasa a fool for remembering him? The person who gave her a purpose even though she was in the depths of despair? No, not at all. And I think anyone who doesn't understand that doesn't understand how powerful Mikasa's love was, and how much it took for her to let go and love Eren in a healthy and productive way, than an obsessive one. I'm sorry I didn't go more into depth with this section of the video. To be completely honest, the dynamic of Mikasa and Yame is one of the plot points in AOT I am least invested in, but for the purposes of this video I tried my best to convey its thematic significance and meaning to the greater story the best I could. I think conceptually this plot point is really good, but the execution itself fell flat. That is my main gripe with it. Thematically though, I think it's a very meaningful and beautiful note to end on. Overall, the concept of love is an exceptionally important part of Attack on Titan, and many people have either misunderstood its role in the story or ignored it entirely. I hope this video cleared some things up and helped more people understand how love ties into Attack on Titan. Love is an abstract concept, and therefore it's difficult to really define. So with this video I made it my mission to cover every type of love that is important to the story, and I landed on familial love, existential love, and romantic love. I hope this format and structure made the video more digestive and easy to understand. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to support my channel further and help me grow, consider subscribing, liking, commenting below, and sharing this video with others. Right now I'm in an Attack on Titan mood, so look forward to more videos in the coming weeks. That's all for this video, and until next time, this has been Quick Binger.